a small step, but it is a big step in the right direction in that respect, and I encourage all of my colleagues to support it. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, our hope is that this will shed some light on these bank failures. We hope it will also shed light on why so many business people have come to all of us in this body to find out why they cannot get loans to promote job growth, to help expand their businesses. We need those answers. We also need to make sure that this study will shed some light on what effects TARP and loss share agreements have had on our community banks. We also hope that it will shed light on why immediate write-downs are being demanded on our community banks when the loans are performing. People are paying their interest. They're meeting their renewal requirements, yet regulators are insisting that these loans be marked down. This has caused what I call a paper loss for a lot of these bankers that are then being made to ask to raise capital when they're under cease and desist orders. So all of this does not work together. And in fact, a lot of things that we have done in this previous Congress has caused the snowball to roll faster downhill. I hope they'll look at the mark-to-market to see what has happened and what the effect of banks that have gotten TARP money have come in and fire sold properties that have caused real property values to go down, not just for the banks, but for the people that have bought in there. We need to find out why loss share agreements promote not modifying loans, why it promotes getting rid of some of these bad loans, why it promotes being able, a bank to be able to get rid of property when the government guarantees them 95% of their loss. What effect has that had on our community banks that didn't get the TARP, that have not been allowed to be any of these loss share agreements? These are answers that we're looking for. And, Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers, so with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2056 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed. And without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Georgia.
With that, I request a recorded vote. No. Okay. I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present, and I make a point of order that a quorum is not present. That way we get a choice.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Idaho rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the further consideration of H.R. 2584, and that I may include tabular material on the same.
Without objection, so ordered.
Pursuant to House Resolution 363 in Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 2584. Will the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Dole, kindly take the chair?
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 2584, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for the Department of the Interior, Environment, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose on Monday, July 25th, 2011, the bill had been read through page 3, line 2. The clerk will read.
Page 3, line 3, in addition, $32,500,000 for the processing of applications for permit to drill.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Clark of Michigan. Page 3, line 3, after the dollar amount, insert reduced by $10 million.
Mr. Chair.
Page 65, line 19, after the dollar amount, insert increase
I ask that
by...
the reading requirement be suspended.
Without objection. Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also ask to revise, unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment would move $10 million from the Bureau of Land Management to the Environmental Protection Agency's geographic programs under the Environmental Programs and Management account. But here's the bottom line what this $10 million is all about. It's helping to save jobs connected to the $7 billion Great Lakes fishing industry. This industry and the jobs connected to it are at stake, are at risk because of the Asian carp. So it's my intention that the Environmental Protection Agency designate this additional $10 million to the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative to stop the Asian carp from migrating into the Great Lakes. Unfortunately, just last week, and this is the urgency of this situation why I'm offering this amendment, just last week the Army Corps of Engineers found Asian carp DNA in Lake Michigan. This is deeply disturbing. We have to do everything in our power to stop the Asian carp from migrating to the Great Lakes River Basin, Great Lakes Basin, because of the $7 billion industry that's at stake. You know, these carp, they come and they eat all the food up in the ecosystem, and that leaves very little for the native fish. The native fish is what people fish for in the Great Lakes. So, again, I urge this body, for the sake of preserving the Great Lakes fishing industry, to allow this amendment. And again, it's my intention that the additional $10 million would go toward the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, which right now is underfunded by $100 million. So it'll be some measurable improvement. And to have that money focus on preserving our Great Lakes fishing jobs by stopping the Asian carp. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I'm able to reserve my time, I would do so. If not, I do yield my time back.
The gentleman yields back his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise? The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this amendment in strong opposition to this bill. The Interior Appropriations Bill that is before us today is a radical assault on public health, on clean air, and clean water, and on our environment. And this bill wouldn't create a single job. Instead of creating jobs and protecting the public health, this bill gives polluters and other special interests license to do just about anything that they want. This might be the single worst bill in this House for our public health and in the environment since the days of Newt Gingrich and Tom DeLay. In this bill, the House Republicans are undermining the Clean Water Act, they're creating loopholes in the Clean Air Act, and they're gutting the Endangered Species Act. And that's not all. This legislation makes it harder for our states and our cities to improve our crumbling water and wastewater systems through the State Clean Water and Drinking Water Revolving Funds. The legislation blocks the Environmental Protection Agency from protecting us from mercury and soot and power plant pollution. Under this bill, the EPA would hardly be allowed to do anything about dangerous pollution that threatens our public health. The legislation blocks the new vehicle standards that will save consumers at the gas pump and would reduce the amount of oil that we import as a nation. And if that wasn't bad enough, the bill decides to prohibit the state of California from setting its own clean vehicle standards.
The legislation also includes an extinction rider, one of the most aggressive threats to the Endangered Species Act in my career here, that would freeze all of the efforts to protect the imperiled species across the country. And one of the most offensive aspects of this bill is, out of a very long list, is that the 80% cut in the Land and Water Conservation Fund. For nearly 50 years, the Land and Water Conservation Fund has taken oil and gas drilling fields, a finite resource, to invest them in a continuing protection of our resources on land. Not taxpayer dollars. These are taken from the oil companies that drill in the offshore. They use that money to preserve the national parks, the wildlife habitat, trails, and working ranches and forests. With this cut, Republicans are breaking a decade-long that has been a bipartisan consensus across this country. Promise that we will use these oil and gas royalties to protect important American places for future generations. Outside of the Republican conference in the House of Representatives, I don't know anyone in this country who wants to end our commitment to use these fees of big oil to protect our parks and recreation areas. These are our public lands. These are the lands that America's families use every summer, use at different seasons in different parts of the country all of the time. These are the public spaces that make us the envy of the rest of the world. These are the public systems that the countries from all over the world send people to understand. How did we save them? How do we protect them? How do we manage them? We set the standard for the world. As it was said earlier, one of America's best ideas. But now all of that is threatened under the cuts of these funds for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Mr. Speaker, these are a few of my reasons, but there are many, many more why I would strongly oppose this legislation and the very bad ideas that it contains. I would hope that this Congress would reject this reject this legislation out of hand.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Idaho rise?
Move to strike the last word in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate what the gentleman is trying to do. This amendment would limit the BLM from spending $10 million in offsetting collections for oil and gas fees and put the funding into the EPA's geographic programs. I understand what he's trying to do. I'm sympathetic with what he's trying to do. I'm not necessarily opposed to increasing this program, and we recognize the challenge of the Asian carp in the Great Lakes. We have many invasive species in Idaho, so I certainly understand where the gentleman is coming from and the challenges that they face. That said, we worked hard to balance funding in this bill. We already funded invasive species in the Great Lakes at $43 million, and the total for Great Lakes geographic program is $250 million. It makes little sense as an offset to take funds from the offsetting collections for the cost to administer the oil and gas programs. In other words, these programs are paid for by the industry, not by the taxpayers. So while I don't necessarily oppose what the gentleman is trying to do, it's the offset that the gentleman has created to put the $10 million in there. And I know that we've tried to create a balance between these different programs with limited funding. So I think we've done a good job in the Great Lakes, the best we could in this bill, and I would oppose the amendment and ask my members to oppose the amendment.
The gentleman yields back.
I ask the gentleman yield time, please.
Gentleman.
I'd be happy to yield if I have time left.
Gentleman reclaims his time. You have time left.
Reclaim my time. I'd be happy to yield to the gentleman.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I do have a newspaper article that does state that the oil and gas industry does hold around 7,200 drilling permits that haven't been used yet. But I do take the gentleman's point in consideration. If there's a way that we could work out something, because I'm not trying to undercut the drilling program at all here. I did notice in fiscal year 2012 that there was I should say, a surplus in terms of what we funded, which was around $45 million. In terms of the collections that were received were around $27 million. So there was around an $18 million overfunding there. So that's why I did ask for this offset, because I felt it would be responsible and would not undercut the drilling permit program here.
Well, reclaiming my time, I appreciate the gentleman, what the gentleman is trying to do. As I said, we do have some concerns with the offsets, but I am more than willing, once this bill goes to conference in whatever form, depending on the outcome of this amendment, obviously, to work with the gentleman to see what we can do with the geographical programs, not just the Great Lakes programs, but there are both Republicans and Democrats that care about that geographical program, and so we've tried to do the best we could there, but there are other geographical programs that Mr. Dix is concerned about and that Mr. Moran is also concerned about, and we'll work with the gentleman in conference in trying to address the concerns expressed by the gentleman.
I ask a gentleman to yield time back, please.
Be happy to yield.
I offer this amendment because what's at stake. It's a $7 billion industry in the Great Lakes fishing industry, and right now Metro Detroit and the state of Michigan's been very hard hit economic times, by our industrial base being eviscerated. This is the one saving grace in our state and in that region is the fishing industry. That's the reason why I'm asking for this right now. It's emergency action. We found Asian carp DNA in Lake Michigan last week. I believe I've got to do everything in my power as a representative of not only Michigan but of that entire region to stop that carp from getting into the Great Lakes system, which would destroy our fishing industry. I urge your help.
Yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Question. Question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Vote.
The amendment is not agreed to.
Gentleman
from Michigan.
Vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan will be postponed. What's up? For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the underlying bill, the majority has underfunded the Interior Department agency charged with issuing new drilling permits and ensuring that offshore drilling is safe. The underlying bill would underfund the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Regulation, and Enforcement, BOEMR is what it's called, by nearly $35 million. This is the agency that is charged with the responsibility of ensuring that we drill safely off of the coastline of the United States. At our very recent hearing, the director of that agency, Michael Bromwich, said that underfunding this agency, as the majority, the Republicans, have done in this bill, would slow down new offshore drilling permits and make offshore drilling less safe, and that is unacceptable. Unfortunately, the rule the majority adopted has protected the underlying provision limiting the inspection fees paid by the oil and gas industry from a point of order. And now, the Republicans will not allow the House to work its will on the amendment that I have drafted with the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Holt, and the gentlelady from California, Mrs. Capps. Our amendment would have fully funded this safety agency by increasing the inspection fees on the oil and gas industry. The top 5 oil and gas companies made $35 billion in profits just in the first 3 months of this year. This week, they will likely report similar profits for the second quarter. In fact, earlier today, BP reported quarterly profits of $5.6 billion. That's just for the last 3 months. BP made $5.6 billion. Yet the industry as a whole pays just $10 million a year in inspection fees for offshore drilling. And the Republicans are putting it offshore today from any consideration by the members of this body. So our amendment would have, if the Republicans had allowed us, to implement a key recommendation from the independent BP Spill Commission. The BP Commission recommended increasing the $10 million per year that the oil and gas industry currently pays in inspection fees significantly, and that is what our amendment would have done. And for my friends on both sides of the aisle who are concerned about reducing federal spending, the increased funding for the safety agency from our amendment would have come from the oil and gas industry and not from taxpayers. But the majority won't even allow a vote on this amendment. The oil and gas industry supports increased funding for BOMR. Just last November, the President and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute, Jack Gerard, said, "We fully support Congress providing additional resources for the safety agency." This agency needs the additional inspectors and the increased staff and the training resources to allow more efficient review and approval of oil and natural gas permit applications and processing of environmental reviews. But what have the Republicans done in this bill? They have underfunded this agency. The oil industry agrees that there needs to be more funding to process permits and conduct inspections. The only question is whether a portion of that funding is going to come from a small increase in inspection fees, as the independent BP Commission has recommended, or whether American taxpayers will have to pick up the entire tab. We are saying that they should pay the fee. The American Petroleum Institute should pay the fee. The oil industry should have to pick up the tab. And right now, we do not have an ability to debate that on the House floor. When people go to get their cars inspected to ensure they are safe and not a threat to the environment, they pay a small fee. But the oil and gas industry, which is recording the largest profits in the history of the world, doesn't have to pay a fee to get some of their rigs inspected to ensure that we don't have another Deepwater Horizon disaster. The American people want these rigs inspected to make sure they are safe, not allow oil companies to be safe from paying for more inspection fees. But when they're trying to cut the deficit, the Republican majority is giving another gift to the oil industry, straining our oil safety agency. More than 1 year after the BP spill, it is still business as usual.
For what purpose is the gentlewoman from California rise? Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to strike the last word so that I can speak today about how this legislation we are considering undermines the ability of the federal government to continue protecting our nation's air, land, and waters. I intended to offer an amendment along with my colleague from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, my colleague from New Jersey, Mr. Holt, to fully fund the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Regulation, and Enforcement, fully fund the national agency in charge of regulating offshore oil and gas drilling. Unfortunately, due to changes by the Republican leadership to the House budget process, we weren't allowed to offer this amendment. Mr. Chairman, it's been over a year since the nation's worst offshore oil spill. And I think our constituents would be surprised to learn that rather than taking action to prevent another deadly spill, this House continues to talk about expanding offshore drilling while sidestepping environmental laws to do so. They'd also be surprised, our constituents, to learn that the underlying bill blocks the Bureau's ability to collect inspection fees. And as a result, the agency would see a $35 million cut in their budget. Mr. Chairman, in his fiscal year 2012 budget request, President Obama asked for a significant increase for the Bureau over his 2010 budget. He asked for this new money to hire additional inspectors, to enhance environmental reviews, and to enforce strengthened regulations. If we recall a year ago in the events following the spill, we will understand why this is the case. While this request was a significant increase over prior years, the administration proposed to offset nearly half of the request by increasing the inspection fees on offshore rigs. This was a key recommendation of the President's bipartisan, independent National Oil Spill Commission. In their report, the commissioners recommended the industry fee should be increased to, and I quote from their report, to provide adequate leasing capabilities and regulatory oversight for the increasingly complex energy-related activities being undertaken on the OCS, unquote. Our straightforward amendment adopts this key recommendation to provide the funding needed for government regulators to do their jobs, and it will ensure a safer and more environmentally responsible industry. Mr. Chairman, knowing what we know now, if we continue to allow offshore drilling in U.S. waters, the government has a responsibility to ensure that they are protecting us against a repeat of last year's disaster. And if oil and gas corporations want the opportunity to drill, it's only fair for them to help cover the cost of ensuring it's done properly, that their workers are protected and the surrounding ocean is safe. But ultimately, Congress holds the purse strings, and we must require these corporations to step up so the Bureau can ensure that the people, communities, economies, and environment of the Gulf, of Alaska, off the Southern California coast are sufficiently protected against a spill. Whether or not we have an agency capable of properly regulating the oil and gas industry is dependent upon our decisions. Without these fees, taxpayers, rather than the industry, would have to shoulder the cost of these operations. If we want to ensure safe and responsible energy development, we must put to the lessons learned from the BP oil disaster to use. I urge my colleagues to vote down this bill, which blocks the Bureau's ability to collect inspection fees. It's what's needed so we do not have to endure a repeat of the horrific disaster that is still inflicting pain and damage to the Gulf of Mexico and to those who make their living from it. What a terrible legacy of this Congress that we have done so little following the Gulf oil disaster. What a legacy should, God forbid, a future disaster take place, and we would have remembered that on our watch we could have done something about it. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back. What purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
As you've heard, this appropriations bill provides several $100 million to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Regulation, and Enforcement. Sounds like a lot of money, but it is far less than what is needed for the safety and environmental protection, protection of the environment and of workers for offshore oil and other activities. The director of the Bureau recently testified that these funds that are missing are needed, and that they will have, their lack will have a direct and immediate impact on the ability of the agency to hire inspection and permitting personnel. It's interesting that so eager is the majority to look after the interests of the oil industry that they ruled out of order our amendment, which provides one way to make up for these lost funds. This amendment that I would have offered with Mr. Markey of Massachusetts and Ms. Capps of California had the amendment been in order. So eager are they to look after the interests of the oil industry that they actually work against the oil industry. The irony is pretty rich here. At a time when the majority is aggressively pushing their oil, drill agenda, they're slashing the very funds that are needed by the Bureau to conduct the lease sales and issue the permits and inspect the offshore drilling facilities so that the industry can move ahead safely and efficiently. You know, at a time when we are about, according to the majority here, are about to require seniors and the poor to pay more for their health care, and the majority is considering drastic cuts to the social safety net and considering trading away critical parts of Medicare and Medicaid, the majority is prepared to hand out yet another subsidy to the oil industry. They refuse to make in order the legislation that would take 0.02%, that's 0.2% of the annual profits of the top 5 oil companies, to replace the missing $35 million in inspection fees. That amount would fully fund the Bureau and would ensure that the agency could effectively and efficiently issue the permits, and conduct the safety inspections. This is an industry that is making tens of billions of dollars each quarter. As we've heard, BP just today announced that more than $5 billion profit. That was a little bit below expectations, we read. $5 billion in the last 3 months. So as a result, because this amendment is not being made in order, this bill, should it become law, would leave the agency that is responsible for the management and regulation and enforcement of offshore drilling underfunded, understaffed, and it would leave the public and the workers at risk. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The clerk will read.
Page 3, line 21, construction, $3,576,000. Land acquisition, $4,880,000.
At the desk.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Hampshire rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Bass of New Hampshire.
I ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, that the amendment be considered as read.
Is there an objection to the dispensing of the reading? Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman for recognizing me and making it possible for me to offer this amendment at this point in the bill. This amendment will restore $20 million to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. It is offset by a $20 million reduction from the Department of Interior salaries and expenses. Now, the Department of Interior salaries and expenses at present is about $250 million, so this would represent roughly a 10% reduction in the overhead for the agency. But what do you get for that? You get about an 8% increase in the Land and Water Conservation Fund funding. Now, the Land and Water Conservation Fund, as has been mentioned by other speakers, was established 46 years ago in 1965. It was designed as a forward-looking program to preserve critical assets in America for all of us to enjoy. When you travel around the world, you don't find countries like America that have large parts of our country preserved for public use. Most of the land in other countries around the world is owned privately or by the government, and it's not accessible to the public. The LWCF, through its stateside program, its Forest Legacy Fund, have provided countless acres of protected land for public enjoyment. Now, the fund has for the last 25 or so years received most of its funding from offshore oil royalties. And those royalties have averaged anywhere from $7 billion to $18 billion a year. And I have a little table here for the last few years that shows the total royalties and how little amount of money that the Land and Water Conservation Fund takes from these receipts. It's authorized at $900 million. It's been funded as of late at around between $300,000 and $500,000. But my friends, this year it's funded at less than $70 million. We Republicans have set as a goal in our principles to reduce the growth of government and to reduce programs to their January 1, 2008 level. What have we done in this appropriations bill? We have reduced this fund to its 1965 level. I have here another little table that shows the historical funding for the Land and Water Conservation Program. There's 1965. We will be lower than that if we don't pass this amendment. I ask you, my friends, for the sake of the 900,000 Americans that visit these lands during the year, of the countless hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars that are spent on the outdoor recreation industry, through the outdoor recreation industry, for those opportunities that we may never see again to make critical purchases and easement purchases of assets that are so important to the future of our country. To raise this appropriation from 68 to 70, to $90 million is a small price to pay for what could be done with those funds. We need to continue the program of land conservation, local recreation, and yes, working forests. And a $68 million appropriation just plain doesn't do it. So, on behalf of my sponsors, I urge you, my co-sponsors rather, I urge you, Mr. Chairman, to support this amendment and make it a part of the underlying bill. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise? The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I join my friend from New Hampshire as one of the co-sponsors of this amendment, and I urge House passage. Mr. Chairman, let me say at the outset that this is a terrible bill. This is the first time that I've come to the House floor to speak on it, and it goes without saying that the devastation that this underlying legislation would do to our, frankly, century-long history of environmental protection is almost indescribable. The League of Conservation voters said simply this, that this bill is the biggest assault on the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the wildlife and wild places we hold dear to ever come before Congress. It rolls back new vehicle emission standards. It guts the Clean Water Act. It defunds the Endangered Species Act. And in the middle of it all, it adds an 80% cut to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. As my friend Representative Bass rightly pointed out, it essentially reverses 50 years of investment in land conservation by returning this account back to the 1965 level. It was a great Republican president, Teddy Roosevelt, who first had the wisdom to understand how integral the open spaces of this country are to what it means to be an American. There is something unique about this country. The views and the vistas are just one part of it. Our identity is wrapped up in the places that we have conserved, the places that we have conserved through the very rightful acts of investment by our federal government over the last 50 years, but indeed over the last 100 years. And it's been Republican and Democratic presidents, Republican and Democratic Congresses, that since that moment of awakening in this nation have realized that this is the right kind of investment for this nation. It's the right kind of investment because not only does it preserve the character of our nation, but it does so by leveraging private investment and state investment. As Representative Bass noted, one of the most important pieces of LWCF is the Forest Legacy Program. That program has conserved 2 million acres around the country. In my state of Connecticut, it's helped conserve 8,000 acres, and it does it by partnering with state resources, with local resources, and indeed with private resources. In my state, often through the generosity of land trusts. This is an incredibly wise investment, as it has been over the years. And worst of all, this isn't even getting at the larger question of deficit reduction, because this account has never been funded through deficits. It's never been funded through borrowing. It's been funded through the money that comes from our offshore oil leases. There are so many horrible cuts in this bill. There are so many reasons for those of us who believe in the concept of environmental protection made real by bipartisan support over the course of the last century to oppose this bill. But this is, in my mind, the worst of it. This is a sad day where we stand today. This is a small increase beyond what the Republicans have proposed to cut, but I think it is meaningful in the sense that it is an opportunity for this Congress to come together and say what dozens upon dozens of Congresses have said since 1965, that it is an American investment to spend federal money towards the project of land conservation. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Chairman, I will claim the time in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I am a strong supporter of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. It's one of the great environmental success stories of the past 50 years. The $65.8 million that the bill contains for the Land and Water Conservation Fund is, in fact, as has been stated, the lowest since the program was started back in 1965. This is a 78% cut from the current level of funding. But I have to oppose the Bass-Murphy amendment because it not only is too small, but the offset used would in fact harm other important programs. The $20 million for the Land and Water Conservation Fund that the Bass-Murphy amendment would restore is less than 10% of the $235 million cut from this year's level. So to fund this plus-up, the Bass amendment actually makes it worse by taking $20 million from the Office of the Secretary's account. Because what appears to be an increase in funding in the Secretary's office is actually the transfer of the revenue collection function from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Regulation, and Enforcement. The Office of the Secretary took that in so that the Interior Department can do a better job in collecting the royalties and payments that are due the American people from outer continental shelf drilling. But if you take this $20 million away, it jeopardizes those collections. The problem is that the Land and Water Conservation Fund is in fact funded with outer continental shelf royalties. But if you take away the ability to collect those royalties, not only are you taking the $20 million from the ability of the Secretary of Interior to manage the office, but you could very well be costing the government much more than $20 million because they won't have the ability to collect those royalties that in fact pay for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Now, we couldn't agree more that it never should have been cut by 78%. It should be restored. We have said that in our statement. We support amendments to restore it, but certainly not to take it from the ability of the Secretary of Interior to collect very revenues that the government needs that the American people are owed. And so that's why, regrettably, I have to oppose the gentleman's amendment. And I will yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Hampshire. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Lamborn of Colorado. Page 4, line 6, after the dollar amount, insert decreased by $4,880,000. Page 10, line 1, after the dollar amount, insert decreased by $15,047,000. Page 15, line 19, after the dollar amount, insert decreased by $18,294,000. Page 78, line 1, after the dollar amount, insert decreased by $12,500,000. Page 158, line 25, after the dollar amount, insert increase by $50,721,000.
Mr.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I am offering this amendment on behalf of and in cooperation with Representative Paul Brown of Georgia, who could not be here tonight. And what this amendment does is it would zero out all of the land acquisition programs within the Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill, thus placing more than $50 million in the spending reduction account in order to reduce our national debt. The federal government already owns more than 650 million acres of land, or about 30% of the total land area of the United States. Now, we can't even take good care of the lands that the federal government already owns. And an example of this is that the Park Service has a current backlog of several billions of dollars of repairs and maintenance in our beautiful national parks.
At a time when we are facing an unprecedented fiscal crisis, the federal government needs to focus its energy on taking better care of the land it already has rather than purchasing additional acres. Our federal agencies have enough on their plate, and if we zero out these land acquisition programs, we can save a significant amount of money. Mr. Speaker, we cannot spend our way out of the debt dilemma. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and to send more than $50 million toward paying down our national debt. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman may not reserve.
Excuse me? Then I yield back. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Well, we rise in opposition to this amendment.
The gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I kind of wish that our friends who just spoke on an amendment to add $20 million were still around, because their points are well taken. You know, we've already cut 78% from this program. I would say to the gentleman from Colorado, and here you want to eliminate it entirely. Land and Water Conservation Fund is one of the premier environmental programs in this country. Most Americans have no idea how important it has been to their quality of life and to the ecology of this great country. But by wiping out these funds entirely, the amendment would force land management agencies to cease all work on congressionally approved projects that are now underway using previous year appropriations. This mean-spirited amendment will hurt willing landowners who are willing to sell, because it's going to prevent agencies from finishing the commitments that are already in place. Among the willing sellers who would be unfairly thrown to the curb are owners who are partway through contracted sales and are counting on Land and Water Conservation funding to complete those sales, those contracts that they've already been working on. Many landowners, who range from elderly widowers and family trusts to ranchers and forest owners, have pressing financial needs that now depend on the completion of what are ongoing land and water conservation projects. The amendment would also frustrate land exchanges that are currently in process. So it's not just the sale of land, it's exchanges of land that this amendment would prohibit. Many of them have been years in the making, and so very important for local and private economic development and for public land management. Under this amendment, staff would not even be in place to accept and process donations of important natural, historic, and other properties. Donations to the public, you wouldn't even have staff to accept those donations. Without staff, right-of-way work to provide or maintain access to key public needs also would be impossible. The public, the American taxpayer, would be unable to secure critically needed routes for fuels and wildfire management, or for watershed management, or for access for sportsmen and other recreational use. I can't imagine the sportsmen in this country could ever want to have this kind of prohibition go in place, that they can't even get access to important recreational areas for fishing and hunting and so on. The amendment would exacerbate an already draconian cut, 78% cut to the Land and Water Conservation Program. It's a program that is already paid for using a very small percentage of oil drilling receipts. I would hope that my colleagues and anybody that might be listening to this debate would understand that land and water conservation funds are not taxpayer dollars. They come from the receipts from oil and gas drilling that is on publicly owned land. Those royalties, even though they're a small percentage, but they nevertheless come into the government, and that's what we use to fund the Land and Water Conservation Fund. But this would eliminate that program. This amendment represents a complete elimination of a bipartisan program that has existed for 45 years. This proposal prevents revenues deposited in the Land and Water Conservation Account from being used for their authorized purposes. These funds were a promise made to the American people in 1964. This Congress should not be breaking that long-standing commitment. So I obviously oppose the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman?
For what purpose did the gentleman rise?
Strike last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, first let me apologize to the gentleman from Virginia for the last amendment. That we both had some concerns that he expressed very well about taking $20 million out of the Secretary's office and the impact that that could have. And as we discussed it during his debate, I think both of us are concerned of the underfunding of the Land and Water Conservation Fund and would like to see that fund increase. So during his debate in opposition to the amendment, we kind of decided to accept the $20 million in the amendment from the gentleman from New Hampshire and the gentleman from Connecticut's amendment. So I apologize for the confusion in the middle of all that. But the gentleman's issues that he raised about the Secretary's budget and the impact that have are real. And we will have to address those in conference, and I want to work with you to do that. Let me rise in opposition to this amendment. I have concerns that this is eliminating all of the funds, especially since we just increased them by $20 million. But when we had this limited allocation, we had to make some tough decisions. The Secretary wanted it fully funded at $900 million, as did the Obama administration. We simply did not have that kind of money. And to put more money into it, given our allocation, we would have had to take the money out of some other programs that are very important to other people. What we did do is put enough money in it to keep the programs and the purchases and the deals that have been made with citizens to acquire land that are already in progress so that those could be completed. We didn't put additional money in there. I happen to be a fan of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. I think it's done some great things. I've seen it do things in Idaho. I've seen it do things in other states that are very important. Westerners, though, have a different view of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And let me tell you what it comes from, is that most of the money that's put into the Land and Water Conservation Fund, at least a large percentage of it, is used to buy land in states in the West. That's states that are already highly leveraged by the federal government. In Idaho, 64% of the land in Idaho is owned by the federal government. So a lot of Westerners say, listen, if you want to put money in the Land and Water Conservation Fund, you want to buy the whole East Coast, we don't care. But what we want in Idaho and what we want in Western states is some private land to be able to pay the taxes to support our education system and other services that are necessary. I have one county in Idaho that is 96% federal land. 96% federal land. Bigger than the state of Rhode Island. That means 4% of the property is paying property taxes to deliver the services to these people. Several years ago, a mountain climber from, not from Idaho, but from somewhere else, came out and was climbing the mountains of Mount Bora, died. It took their entire search and rescue budget for the year for that county to retrieve that one body off Mount Bora. That means everybody else that recreated in that county did not have the backup, did not have that search and rescue available because they had no funds, because they have no private land to pay the taxes to fund those services. That's the problem that Westerners that are in states that are highly owned by the federal government have with the Land and Water Conservation Fund. But I'll be the first to admit, it does some wonderful things. If you float down the South Fork of the Snake River, you will see one of the most beautiful canyons and one of the best fishing rivers in the country. And if the gentleman from Washington wants to come out, I'll float him down it. It is an incredibly beautiful place, and it's been done through the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So I believe in the importance of this program. I apologize to the gentleman from Virginia on our previous confusion on that, but I oppose this amendment, and I would encourage my members to oppose it.
For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
Strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just was listening to the debate here, and I'm going, what are they thinking? What is the rationale? What is the purpose for the legislation that we have before us, and more pointedly, the amendment that was just offered? This is an incredible country. This is a country that very recently took great pride in cleaning its rivers, in protecting its citizens from toxics and pollutants and chemicals and poisons. This is a country that took great pride in creating the first ever in this world national park and then expanding it over time to create the most awesome national park system in the entire world. This is a country that took great pride in the Snake River and the use of the Land and Water Conservation Funds. An argument was made a moment ago that there's not enough money, and yet not more than a month ago, an effort to increase the royalties from our oil that is pumped from our land, the land of the people of the United States, to increase those royalties, and in fact even to get a royalty was rejected by our Republican colleagues. So money was available if we simply had gone for the royalties that should be there under any case. This legislation, however, goes far beyond that, and over time will destroy the pride that we have taken in creating our national parks and setting aside for future generations the great vistas of America, protecting our air, our land, and our water. You look at this bill, you look at the details of this bill, and you go, oh my, how could they? How could they put in legislation that would block the effort of the EPA to eliminate mercury poison in our air and water? How could they allow a bill that would create more soot in our atmosphere, put 34,000 lives at risk, exempt the oil companies from air pollution standards and offshore drilling, which in California is a big deal because the wind blows onto the land? How could they threaten the health of millions of Americans by jeopardizing the EPA's critical air, land, and water regulations? And our children. Block the EPA from limiting dangerous air pollution. How could they put together a bill that potentially can contaminate 117 million Americans' water? How could you do that? Have you no pride in this country? Do you not care about the basic things that we have done to create a country that cares about clean water? You talk about jobs, and yet in this bill you eliminate the funding for the Clean Water Act, which is really building sanitation facilities in our community. I remember in the 1960s the great pride that the 500 people in my community of McCallamy Hill took when they got that money from the federal government and actually built the first sanitation system in that small town. How could you deny Americans the opportunity for that? And the drinking water, the jobs that go with it. That's what this bill does. Take pride in what you're doing, gentlemen, because at the end of the day, the American public will not take pride in what you're doing to this piece of legislation. With that, I yield back.
Yields back. Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. Purposes, the gentleman from Colorado rise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk shall read will report the amendment.
Ask unanimous consent to waive the reading.
Is there objection? Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Tipton of Colorado.
The gentleman from Washington reserves the right to object.
What was the gentleman's request? I just didn't hear it.
I just asked for unanimous consent to waive the reading.
Clerk,
no objection.
The clerk shall designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Tipton of Colorado.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is going to apply funds directed towards much-needed conservation programs, which are used to be able to provide access for the American people to our public lands, and to help support jobs in the recreational and sportsman's industry. Our public lands are a treasured resource for all Americans to be able to use and enjoy responsibly. I support a balanced approach to public land use, respecting the environment that we all deeply value, while making the best use of our natural resources on public lands. Recreation, preservation, access, and job creation. These are all important aspects of the multiple use management for which these lands are truly intended. This funding would be used for projects that clearly and specifically improve access for hunting, fishing, and other forms of outdoor recreation on these federal public lands. Of the directed funds, $5 million would be redirected to make public lands public and provide much-needed support for recreational access. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The clerk will read the next amendment.